going back in time when it was very difficult to keep hope, we had a phrase called breadcrumbs. And so we'd be on this path where you couldn't see far ahead of you, and you're like, oh my goodness, are we on the right path? This is so hard. How is it so hard? Barriers coming, probably spiritual warfare, all this stuff. And so we look for breadcrumbs. And that's a phrase we use for those amazing blessings that would happen. Sometimes they were little, sometimes they were big, but they would happen, and we go, oh, yes, we are on the right track. That is only from God. Sometimes others might not notice it, but we knew that is from God. We're on the right track. Keep going.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hart Hustle podcast. Here, most people talk about changing lives, but what does it really take to break generational cycles of poverty, addiction, and homelessness? Today's guest isn't just talking about it. She's been living this. She's been leading this and transforming it for decades. Julie Hayden is the CEO of East County Transitional Living Center, a place where hope doesn't just live, it multiplies. Let's talk about faith, leadership, and the grind behind running one of the most impactful nonprofits in California. How you doing today, madam? Are you excited? Was that a good one for you?
That was
I tried.
great. You got me inspired. I'm excited. Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to get straight to it. And I want to kind of go a little bit backwards, actually.
Mhm.
What pulled you into this kind of work as a teenager? People don't even know. You started this
Yeah.
very early on. Most kids don't spend their free time helping vulnerable communities. Like you were out there actually getting it very early on. What pulled you into it?
It was just kind of natural that the people I was in contact with, good friends, were dealing with really difficult stuff. I remember we were at a fair, and one of my good friends was talking about how he was getting abused at home. And I had to wrestle with, do I tell somebody? What do I do? And I think I was 11 at that time. And then, just going on in teenage years, I had just friends dealing with trauma. They're going through difficult aspects in their life, and I just wanted to help, and I wanted to find effective tools to help. I didn't have them at the time, but it was just kind of that passion. I would say by age 16 I saw myself that I wanted to be a missionary, but I knew the mission field was here. I wasn't gonna have to
Mhm.
go anywhere for it.
You know what's crazy is that we're calling you doctor here. You got the degrees,
Mhm.
you got the titles, but what was the moment when you realized this isn't just a job? This is truly my calling, my purpose.
There were so many times, but there was probably this one key moment. It was my husband and I was married at 19. We've been doing this a long time together. So this is a road we've been on together. And he was studying Genesis, and we were already in the mental health field to some extent. So we saw trauma, addiction, human trafficking, just terrible things. And at the time it seemed scattered. And he was studying Genesis, and it was this aha moment when he's reading the
Mhm.
curses, and it says there's a war or enmity between human seed or woman's seed and Satan's seed. And he's like, man, this is a war that's genetic, biological, sexual. It's Satan against humans, and really the attack is against the family. And so that was a moment in time we said, okay, if the attack's against the family, how do we strengthen families? And it turned into a mantra we use today in everything we do: equip people, strengthen families, impact
Mhm.
communities.
I love this. And I love that you and your husband lead together.
Yeah,
But what's that
absolutely.
one thing that he brings to the table that makes the mission stronger? And what's that one thing that you bring that he can't touch?
Oh, that's a good one. I'll get in trouble if he's seen it now. So, for sure, his biggest strength I appreciate every day is he is up above it all. So, how he thinks is a 40,000-foot view. And that's really helpful because a lot of times, day in, day out, I'm with trauma, difficulty,
Mhm.
craziness of just like intensity. Everything's, life. People's lives are in danger. Everything's very
Mhm.
difficult. And so when I go home, he pulls me up above that, and he says, look at the big picture again. And he helps me come above it all and remember the vision, and remember, why we're doing everything and how to stay creative and flexible. So I greatly appreciate that. He has a big picture vision, and he can remind me of it every day. For me, I would say this is obvious a way we come at together as a team too. I can make complex things simple. So I am a doctor. I know a lot of psychology, a lot of brain science, a lot of information that's really impactful, but I can make it very simple for everybody to understand. So sometimes he has very sophisticated ideas,
Hmm.
brilliant, amazing ideas, and as long as I can get it, I can give it to the world. So we spent years of me, getting it all from him, and then I'd go teach. I'd teach a class. I'd teach this. I
I love
sound
that.
I sound brilliant. Really is coming from him, but I have the heart, to bring
Yeah.
it into something that's bite size that everybody could understand.
That's something that is amazing also actually when you think about being able to, I always say, make it make sense,
I
right?
love that.
Dumbing it down, because I was a facilitator at one point, and people always say like, man, you're so good. I'm like, yeah, because I understood what I was teaching, and all I wanted to do is to make it make sense. So I would actually teach it, like, physically teach it off a PowerPoint, because that's what I was hired to do.
Mhm.
But then when I actually got the hands on, I just made it make sense, like just dumbing it down for people, because you are right. People may see your husband and get lost,
Mhm.
and then people see you and you're like, wow, but you guys said the same exact things. It was just the words you used, maybe that's how you told it, the energy you gave it. There's so many different ways of it, and your husband's probably gonna be mad that you shared that he's not that good, but it's all good. It's
No,
all
no,
good.
that's because he's so smart.
I love it. You also mentioned faith, that you and your husband have faith, and I like that. I love that we get into these conversations. But faith not just shaped your path, but it also just kind of led. It's how you led people, right? Your staff, your clients, and everyone in between. How has that faith truly just shaped, like, and what directions do you see the changes in your leadership skills and things like that?
So I was saved early on. So my faith has been a part of my life, from a very young age. And I was raised in a family where, my parents pushed it to be personal, that you study the Bible, you understand your faith for yourself and be able to defend it. So that was always there. And I definitely had a level of faith that, I knew God could do amazing things and it was going to be bigger than me. And
Hmm.
us coming together, that was something we wanted, but it eventually became necessary. That what was in front of us was way too big. It could not be us alone that did it. And so it had to be God intervening and blessing and paving the way. So faith became necessary. I do remember a moment in time where I had to switch from doing things because it was right to doing something in faith. So not worrying about is it the right thing or the wrong thing,
Hmm.
and more, am I walking in the spirit and am I walking out of faith? And that allowed me to navigate a lot more. And it is why we do what we do. So we are doing our effort in the physical realm because we believe that it is going to the kingdom, that people's lives are going to the kingdom if they meet God and they know who he is, that our work we do in the spirit is going to the kingdom, that it's for something bigger in the future. And that is has helped in the very difficult times where we've had to ask ourselves, are we willing to sacrifice everything for this? And we decided yes. And if it all collapses, we'll wake up tomorrow morning and do it again. That we're
Yeah.
all in.
I actually ask you, was there a moment, you kind of touched it a little bit, but was there the actual moment where your faith made you choose the harder right over the easier wrong?
I don't know about one moment. There were many moments like that, for sure. So it was kind of the easy road or the difficult road often.
Hmm.
So, I would say naturally I was young and smart, could learn fast. So I did go through education, but I could pursue, jobs with lots of money or pursue, you know, uh, academia. We have a
Hmm.
university, but there's the road of, well established institution that you get tenure and you get a lot of money. And I didn't choose that. I had to choose every day, like, what was God calling me to? Not the easy road. Those are good roads. Those are valuable roads. But the road we chose is like, I have a
Hmm.
gentleman that always says hand to hand combat, trench warfare. That's the road we chose for something bigger in the kingdom, that you're not always going to feel comfortable in the moment in your physical life. So I have had many very big moments of having to choose to stay on the difficult road that we feel is most valuable.
We're just getting started into this podcast, and we already have so many moments that I know are going to be really clippable here because you're just so good with the answers that you're giving. And I want to kind of pivot a little bit into your organization, which is what you're leading today, that East County Transitional Living Center. What makes it different from the average shelter or program that's already kind of been around for so many years?
This has actually been around for a lot of years. It was just hidden. Nobody knew about it. And the core raw material that makes it so special has always been there. But I think what I've brought to it makes it better. So what has always been there that I think works better than anything else I've seen is it combines work therapy along with
Mhm.
a faith-based approach. And so what you end up having is a community. So people get there and
Mhm.
first thing they do is just get stable. They just rest, eat food, and they're safe. And there's no drugs or
Mhm.
alcohol, which, funny enough, is unique. So there's a lot of places they call it low barrier that people can still use and drink because they're worried about housing. We're worried about changing their life forever. So we do not allow any drugs or alcohol. So they have to
Mhm.
come in, stay clean and sober, and they're just safe. When they're ready, they work and maybe they do a chore, maybe they actually do a job out there. And it's funny because this is not a piece of most programs, but when I watch that transition, when they get their job or their chore that they're responsible for,
Mhm.
their whole demeanor changes. They are proud of themselves. They have self-confidence. So that's a huge piece that I see do amazing things. In all of it, we they have Bible studies and life skills, Bible studies and life skills. So they're
Mhm.
understanding how much God loves them. They're freely able to embrace, personal relationship with God. And then they're out there working hard and learning how to fight, how to communicate, how to, do things in a healthy way that they might have missed. So life skills and kind of the call to rise to better. We
Mhm.
do that also through leadership training. So they are trained on how to be managers and leaders, you know, early on, in maybe 4 months into the program, they start learning these concepts of how they can be a leader in their family and in their community. And it just holds people to higher expectations and they rise to the expectations. So the work therapy, obviously, there's lots of faith-based programs. So I don't think that's unique, but I think it's
Mhm.
why it works. And then that work therapy along with leadership and management training to me are some of the core reasons that I've just never seen anything quite like it.
And last time that we actually spoke, you talked about being family centered care in a world that really is focusing on individuals. Why is treating the family as a unit so important to you and the organization?
Well, I think actually everybody in the field would know this is true, even though you don't see it implemented. But you
Mhm.
have one person and they want to get healthy. Whatever effort they do to get healthy, they go back into the same system, into the same family and community
Mhm.
that is not healthy. And then
Yeah.
it all falls apart. It's hard. So when you can incorporate the family, maybe even others in the community, then you can have lasting change. And sometimes that takes time. So another kind of valuable piece of ECTLC is that it's a year-long program. And so if they have that long under their belt before they go out, they have time to restore relationships, to bring other family
Mhm.
members in. And if you have the whole family on board to get healthy, now you have more of a chance that that is change that can last. They have a whole new life. They're on a new path by the time they leave.
Do you recall a story that maybe you think often, a person or family that reminds you why you really do this? I can only imagine there's so many of them, but does one really come to mind?
Yeah, I do have a lot. So the one that always stands out, I think it always stands out because I have a 2-year old. So, I have two teenagers, but I have my
Mhm.
surprise child, a 2-year old, and she's just amazing. And when she hugs really well. And so the story involved a child hugging their mom like you've never seen. So that's why it stands out. So this was a lady that was in Guam, so she was U.S. territory, but not close by, and she had gotten into addiction. She had 4 children. So she was in that lifestyle and nothing was pulling her out of it. Her mom, with her kids, was in a severe car accident and her mom died and her kids survived. And it was a wake up call. And she's like, I got to change my life. So she left. left her kids with family, left, came on her own to ECTLC. And
Wow.
I knew her when she was the first 3 months is a different program. It's off-site for them to get stable. She was there. I'd seen her because she's working in the kitchen. She'd do events where she's, helping with serving people food and this and that. So I knew of her. We had talked. And then one day on the main campus, I saw her with her son clinging to her for dear life. And it just caught my attention, and her face and her emotions saying to me, I got him. I got him. And I'm like, who? What? What's going on? She's like, this is my son. He was able to come over here. He was probably 4. He was pretty young. Little guy just clinging to her. He clinged for her like 3 days straight. And
Yeah.
then she went after her other kids, and she got all her kids here. She got a job. She's doing really well today. She's preparing to move out, looking for an apartment. So just watching that transformation. And, it's been a year now. She's been clean and sober. She pull out of a dark lifestyle and just loving her kids, pouring into her kids, looking at, okay, how am I going to do life a whole different way? Loves God and is giving her kids God in her life. So that one I just love, and I think it's because of how tight her son was clinging to her. Just like,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I want. I want kids to be with their moms.
If the Hard and Hustle podcast has ever sparked any idea or made you think differently, do us a favor. Make sure to guys share this, post it on LinkedIn, or even text that nonprofit friend that you just have. Whatever works, this is what keeps the conversation going and allows us to just grow this community together. Seriously, we appreciate you. And you also said, right, just being a mom of your own, when you see those moments, like it don't matter what kind of day you're actually having in life. When you get home, and I have a 4-year-old, when that 4-year-old gives me a hug, even after she was talking to me any kind of way, it's something about it, right? And to just see those moments where kids can be kids and parents can be parents, it's special. And you see these issues all the time. So I love it. I love that you're in that space where a lot of times people get into jobs, obviously for money purpose of it. But what's cool about the nonprofit is that people do this because of the love.
Mhm.
It's not like you're making a lot of money off of it, right? Like, but we do nonprofits because we love to help others and make a difference. That you said it earlier, it's not about us. It's about the work that we do here that God has allowed us to even do, right? God's giving us these talents, sometimes these testimonies, these stories that we get to share or hear. It's such a pretty cool thing. And what I actually think when it comes to like running nonprofits, it really isn't for the faint heart. How do you actually refill your own cup when you constantly are pouring into others? Because that's one of the things I realize is sometimes I'm like, man, I'm helping everybody, but who's really helping me? How do you deal with these moments?
Mhm. It definitely for me starts with perspective. So, I've done this for a long time. So there were times where it was more difficult because I would put pressure on myself that didn't have to be there. I would think I need a good 8 hours of sleep or bad things are going to happen. Now, I
Mhm.
think sleep is very important, but I let go of that. Just like,
Yeah.
let's just see what happens. So I stopped putting pressure on myself to, I need a certain amount of me time and self-care. And in all these words we use that actually make things worse sometimes because then you feel
Hmm.
pressure like, oh no, I've worked 5 days straight. I should have me time. It's like, well, let it go for now. Just deal with today, embrace today. You're tough. You're a warrior. That type of perspective helped me better. And then I do look for those times, but for me, it doesn't take a lot. When everybody knows when I'm drinking my coffee, the whole world is great, everything's fine. So a little bit goes a long way. Now, the big things that make a difference are when I play with my kids. When I play with my 2-year-old, everything's better. And sometimes I do things like walk in the dirt with no shoes playing with my 2-year-old. That little touch of nature goes a long way for me. A hot bath goes a long way for me. It doesn't need to be a lot, but I need to have those times where I feel it like, okay, this is too
Hmm.
much. And then I also have good people I can talk to. So with that, it's again, might be once a month. It can't be a lot in our lifestyle, but it makes a difference to be able to vent and share good times and bad times with somebody that I trust that can remind me, you're doing great, everything's fine. They can just remind me of truth. And I'm in a lucky situation to be tagged with my husband on this team because it is so much easier to be doing day in, day out with us. We joke that you're never going to see both of us in one spot. Where it's either me or him, and we're tag teaming everything else we're doing. But
Yeah.
it is a huge reason why we can do what we do is that we have each other and we have that team.
I Your husband must be cheesing because I love how when you talk about him, it's just you put him on this pedestal, and I think it's so cool that you and your husband are running multiple organizations. I would really love to know what is the secret to balancing faith, marriage, leadership, and still with a positive mindset. Like you haven't lost your mind yet. Like
Yeah.
how do you balance them all?
So I think it's perspective. So this wasn't as easy, not easy, but it wasn't as fluid as it is now to walk every day like this. So part of the reason we could do what we do now with a good attitude every day is because parts of our brain were broke, So some of the difficulties that we had were so
Mhm.
difficult, we had to let go of traditional, normal lifestyle thoughts. We just had to let it go. So when that happened, we were free to just live today, do today. So unfortunately, for those out there, I wouldn't want it for anybody. I wanted it for myself. I wouldn't change anything. But some of the
Mhm.
difficulties we went through allow us today to handle a lot. So that's difficult. But other than that, I think, I forgot. I don't know if we can edit. I forgot what you asked. I got
No, what are you
distracted.
talking about? Edit. Listen, Dr. Jade Hayden, we're good. We're gonna keep going right now. Um, we're having such a good conversation, and
Yeah.
that's what I love about it is that it's
Mhm.
so authentic that you forget the question.
Yes,
Just talk to me. It's all
yes.
good.
What did you say?
I,
Pedestal.
I
I
actually will
remember my
follow
husband's on a pedestal. Then what?
up. Oh, you felt good. Like, yeah, see, I got my husband. I'm taking care of him over here, and he's somewhere. What is he doing
Yeah.
right now?
I have no idea.
What is
He
he
just
leading?
so
What project is he working on?
he's the CEO of, we have several things. So we have a university, we have a couple different counseling centers, a for-profit and nonprofit, and we do court mandated, so domestic violence, anger management. So we have kind
Mhm.
of a lot in that area, and we're getting ready to open Genesis. So again, he's kind of at the top, floating around, checking on people. He does a lot of trainings for me, sometimes just as a volunteer. So he's just kind of around making sure everything's happening. And he asks a lot of questions, like, is this still happening? Has somebody met with this person? So in that
Love
way,
it.
he lives a flexible lifestyle too. So he takes my kids places. He, does whatever he wants with, kind of the weight on his shoulders. So I do put him on a pedestal in a certain sense, but that is because it's been a long road. And
Hmm.
that whole time, every time I thought there's no way I can go further, we have some kind of conversation where I feel inspired again and we keep going. So I am very grateful for that. And I know he feels the same way. I know he
Yeah.
thinks I'm the most impressive woman out there. And, the times when he's been discouraged, I'm right there, inspiring him. So we are mutually, in awe of each other.
He's somewhere right now.
He
Like
is.
his ears are ringing. Like someone is talking about me. I don't know what it is, and we're having a whole conversation.
Yeah.
I love it. How do you stay hopeful when work is heavy? When
Yeah.
life gets in the way? Right now, we're dealing with all these government issues as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Funding in the
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit spaces. How do you stay hopeful when this is happening?
So again, my path is maybe longer than some. So for me, hope is easy, but it wasn't always. So going back in time when it was very difficult to keep hope, we had a phrase called breadcrumbs. And so we'd be on this path where you couldn't see far ahead of you, and you're like, oh
Mhm.
my goodness, are we on the right path? This is so hard. How is it so hard? Barriers coming, probably spiritual warfare, all this stuff. And so we look for breadcrumbs. And that's a phrase we use for those amazing blessings that would happen. Sometimes they were little, sometimes they were big, but they would happen, and we go, oh, yes, we are on the right track. That is only from God. Sometimes others might not notice it, but we knew that is from God. We're on the right track. Keep going. So breadcrumbs became a very important of our piece of our day-to-day operations.
I like
Um,
that.
and then now it's just so many times God has pulled us out. He's blessed us. there's been too many lives transformed that I just feel like it's rude if I lose hope. That God is amazing. He's blessed us so much that it is my job every day to keep hope and to share hope with others and to remind people how many times God has blessed, and that to inspire and cast vision so others can be hopeful. And that's the other piece
Mhm.
of all of this was vision. So, and we teach it every day. If you see clearly where you're headed, that is what keeps hope. That is what helps you make decisions. You know, we use the metaphor, my husband uses the metaphor of a train track. So you're on a train, you're going to there, you know, you see your destination. You do not worry about stuff on the right or the left. Who cares? If something falls on your train track, that's when you're worried. That's when you need to handle it and get that thing off your train track, because it's in the way of where God has called you to. So vision, and that being a map and a compass, you know, that is also something that we used quite a bit.
Oh, so good. Breadcrumbs. I'm stealing that one.
Mhm,
I'm stealing that one. That was so good. I want to pivot into a different space that you've really been ahead in, which is virtual therapy.
mhm.
Before it was trendy, you were already doing it. What made you believe on it early on, adapting technology like that?
So I would say need, need and opportunity. So the need was we're watching how people were in remote locations and didn't have access. They didn't have access
Hmm.
to therapy, but they also didn't have access to training. So they couldn't
Hmm.
be in a remote location, get trained to help others. There just wasn't a lot accessible to them at that time. So that
Hmm.
was a piece of it. The other piece was opportunity. So we did trainings, and so it was easy for us in our mind, just kind of naturally, like we've talked about. My husband's an entrepreneur, so he just, and so am I. So we just kind of both saw like, hey, we could just live stream this. And I remember being at SARP, which is a military location for drugs and alcohol in Point Loma in San Diego, and I had, a little bit of background in technology. So they're
Hmm.
sitting at something that costs millions and millions of dollars, right? They've got the supervisors got something in their ear. Everybody in a group in other offices has something in their ear. They're running groups, and the supervisors sitting at fancy TVs everywhere. And they have an algorithm to let you know if somebody's aggressive and all this stuff. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, why can't you just do Bluetooth? I'm like, we could copy this, using technology that already exists as easy. And that was at the beginning. So Bluetooth was still no joke then, but it's still, I'm like, I don't need millions to do Bluetooth. Well, just a couple years later, you
Hmm.
had so much accessible in that area. And in 2013, to give you a frame of reference, in 2013, I have a video of me talking. I was a dean of a university, and I was trying to convince others we could have an online doctorate program, and I was trying to convince them of live streaming people from El Centro, which is 2 hours away from us, and just having these conversations. We ended up doing that. We had a master's and doctorate online in the Korean language eventually. So using technology to take things way farther than they could have gone if you didn't use it. And it didn't mean things didn't go wrong or you didn't lose some aspects, but what you gained was so much more. And so we just fell in love with it, and we were kind of on a mission. We thought, hey, there's no reason we can't have education, training, certifications, therapy, everything online to the world. There's no walls, is what we thought in our mind. And that was all before COVID. COVID was a game changer. The strengths we already
Hmm.
had, just we went leaps and bounds. There, I remember the day where everything shut down and we switched to Zoom Office. It was a healthcare version. We had 50 rooms you could send people to. And in
Yeah.
one day, we took about 400 online group therapy clients and switched them to Zoom. So it was fun.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Listen, yeah, ahead of the game, and now with technology like AI, is that something that you're also a fan of? Like, let's say you have this chatbot on the website that could do something for you. What is it doing?
So I haven't done the chat bot. We've had discussions, but I love the idea. But things that we've done is we have an online university. And so we already know, like my son has used Chat GPT for years. Like our
Yeah.
kids were way beyond us in using AI. And so what we've done is we are using AI to help the grading process go faster. And so we're adjusting assignments so that could be graded using AI quicker. We also want to teach our students how to use it well and ethically and professionally so that
Hmm.
they have an advantage. So this is allowing people to do much more than they could do before. For example, when you go for accreditation or uh, APA, American Psychological Association, if you wanted to go get approved by them, you have to have measurable learning outcomes. And, all of these things could take hours and hours and hours. And then with AI, it's done in a minute. You have to know what you're doing in order to make it work for you well. But if you use it as a tool, it saves you days and weeks and months of time. So we want our students to know that, but we don't want them to use AI and not get the skills they need to be effective. And so that we're on the beginning stages of that. I can't pretend like we have it all figured out, but we want to pioneer. We want to be above everything happening so we're ready when it hits us. And I think we've done a great job of it. We're still on the path, we're
Yeah.
still learning, but we want to be asking the questions so we are before it hits mainstream media, if at all possible.
You're like the female version of Gary Vee. You know who Gary Vee is?
I don't, but I'll go find out about him.
Oh yeah, like Gary Vee. Gary Vee though, very foul. When I mean, he's so motivating, but it's the way that he talks,
Hmm.
right? He'll use the profanity and stuff, but he just gets people going that way. And the dude has a marketing company, and now he's a speaker, millions of followers. But that he's before Uber was a thing, he was an investor in Uber. Before Twitter was a thing, he was an investor in Twitter. Before YouTube blew up, he used to tell people like YouTube, YouTube, YouTube. So he's in that content space, and he always likes to show his old videos on when, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I already said this, and look what happened. Like
Hmm.
you guys need to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. So I can only imagine you had that moment when you went back and watched that video. Like, see, I knew what I was talking about the whole time. Even
Absolutely.
people didn't believe me.
The best thing, because this doesn't always happen, the best thing is I meet with these universities that have judged me harshly, and they are very upfront and honest, and they go, Julie, you were right, good job. And they had me do trainings on it, and they didn't have any problem saying like, man, you were ready. So that's cool.
I love it. I love it. When people say tech can't help hard work, what's actually a response? Are you in agreement with that? You not agree?
I definitely don't agree. So one thing is, if it's just perspective, so somebody might say over here like it's not the same, and then over here they're using their phone and every other tech to build relationships. They just don't see it in the same way. We have built relationships over technology for a very long time. How many years has it been since we've written a letter? So it when we moved to even a regular telephone, that's
Hmm.
using technology, and so we just don't see it the same. You move into Facebook and Instagram and all the social media stuff, and then you move
Yeah.
into web-based. We have used technology to build relationships for years. So we did this, but one of the things we said is, why aren't psychologists that are relationship experts pioneering relationship building using
Mm,
technology?
yeah.
Why aren't we there? And say something doesn't work, what can we do to overcome that? So
Hmm.
in a general sense, though, doing therapy online, because I have, and I've had therapy for myself online. I've used therapy with others online, and I build relationships. I can see eye contact, I can see emotions, I can connect, all of that. And we've taught online. So I don't know how many times I have deep relationships with people I've never met in person. And I'll forget. I'll meet them for the first time and go to give them a hug, and they'll be like, oh wait, we've never really met in person. So I think most people can understand that concept. It's just, if you kind of get into the nitty gritty, they might get
Hmm.
caught in old school thinking and language to say, oh, in-person therapy is better because you'll miss something if it's online. Prove it. you
Yeah.
know?
No, I mean, I do agree. It depends on the person, 100%. I think it depends on how uh, connections are. I was always one like yourself where I facilitated virtually. I mean, of course, I love to facilitate in person any day. There's
Mhm.
something about that, but I still got across energy, right? You still make a difference virtually. I mean, the first conversation, it was a conversation that we could have kept going forever, and we just
Yeah.
met each other for the first day.
Yep.
So technology, it's something that people, like you mentioned, may not know how to utilize. But I've also seen people. You think about like the TikTok. How many more people come? and now become more comfortable in front of cameras that they never thought, because now there's community.
Yeah.
Now they built all these, what they call family or friends, and they show up every day. And even my wife, she's getting into it now. She's been a stay-at-home mom, and she's like, man, this is so cool. I've built a community of just stay-at-home moms.
Hmm.
It doesn't happen without the technology piece, without the just kind of that virtual world. So when people say that, I do agree with everything that you mentioned. I like it. And I really want to talk a little bit as we kind of start wrapping this up a little bit. Is you've been on both sides of the for-profit space and also nonprofit,
Hmm.
but you started with a for-profit mindset.
Hmm.
Why do you think more nonprofits should actually think more like a business? I mean, it is a
Yeah.
business, but more in that for-profit space mindset.
Absolutely. So we started with for profit because we saw the misuse of nonprofit, and basically we wanted to exist because we were valuable. So in a for profit model, you either have a service that works well and people buy it and you exist, or you go
Hmm.
away. And so in a nonprofit model, we saw like, hey, if you are good at raising money, you could exist even if you don't work well. And we really
Yeah.
wanted to be effective. So that's why we started with that. So that's what I'd say is the value of the for profit, and we run our nonprofits in that way similar. We want good customer service, professionalism, feedback. Those are our core pillars. And so we run our nonprofits to say we want a good product. That homeless person that you're judging harshly is your customer. How are you
Hmm.
doing a good job for them in getting the goals that they are here for? And so bringing that, aspect of accountability for outcomes to the nonprofit is, I think, tremendous. And I hope everybody does. We see a movement, obviously, where we're wanting our nonprofits to be accountable for
Hmm.
outcomes, and that wasn't always there. And I think that's a piece that for profit always has had because it's had to. Not that you can't have misuse of for profits, but basically, if you're selling something and it's not a good product, you're not going to exist forever. And so that's what I hope we can bring to the nonprofit is accountability of outcomes.
And with your experience now in the nonprofit world, I mean, really both sides of the world, do you see a lot of mistakes that people are actually making, like when it comes to these passion nonprofits, that is pretty much costing them long term?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some big themes is sometimes the people making the decisions are not in it, they're not boots on the ground. And so they might make decisions that seem logical up here, but they're not making decisions based on reality, And so say people that are in the trenches and working with the population and they see stuff that needs to be changed and they go up to make the change, it takes so long by the time anybody, if you're lucky, agrees
Hmm.
to the change and it comes back down, too late. So bureaucracy interferes with effectiveness in the nonprofit model if you're not careful. And so the other things I've seen is that, you know, people don't care about the outcomes. They're getting a paycheck, and sometimes there's not a lot of risk of them getting fired, so they just float around and they are not inspired to do a good job. They're not inspired to do better. And so sometimes you just have people that are there because they're getting a paycheck, but they're not
Hmm.
motivated for why they're there. So that could happen as like a side consequence to somebody not needing to show outcomes. So if somebody's not like, hey, you didn't meet your quota, if nobody's there checking on their work and their quality and that they're efficient, then they could, go to lunch all day and nobody knows, nobody cares. And so you just have a big waste of money. And we see this in the data. So I'm invested, in making sure everybody knows how efficient we are with our nonprofit. And when we did this whole audit from a company, they said we are 10 times more efficient than any other program like us out there. Why?
Wow.
How come? How are you spending that much money if you don't need to? Because it's other people's money. And if I hear that phrase one more time, I'm going to go crazy. I don't like that concept. Oh, well, it's other people's money. You need to protect your resources
Yeah.
wherever that money's coming from. So you can see the misuse sometimes uh,
Yeah.
because people are people, humans are humans. So if they can misuse it, they will.
Yeah, I'm gonna break it down and remember how we make things make sense for those that are listening. That means the wrong person at the head of the table and the wrong people at the table. Really to just simplify it, because I do agree. I see that from time to time. You have someone at the head of the table, and they're just speaking from a place that they just don't have that passion, or it is not purpose to them. And when you have someone like yourself, where passion and purpose is key,
Mhm.
not just for yourself, but every person that sits at that table. You have to be passionate, and a lot of the times, this is your purpose. This is your calling, and you also show somebody that as a leader. So a lot of times, I've been part of boards where it's hard for people to kind of want to get involved when the person up top is giving the negative vibes. The not being a leader per se.
Mhm.
How do we continue to keep that wheel going? You can't.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I like what you mentioned. So for those that are listening, just make it make sense, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Bad head of the table,
Yep.
bad people at the table.
Yep.
I like that. So I really love this conversation when we talking about the nonprofit space. We're talking about the for-profit space. We're talking about what you've done really for so many years. What would you say to someone who thinks nonprofits shouldn't actually sell themselves? From your knowledge, I'm pretty sure you've heard that before. What are your thoughts?
Are you talking a little bit like running a nonprofit more like a business and what could backfire with that? Is that kind of what you're
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say the risk is that you miss the vision, so you, and this is a risk at our place we have to fight, because we're trying to pay our bills, so if you get too much into the business side and the money side, you're thinking I need to make money to survive, and you forget you're dealing with people, so you'd have to be very careful to protect that the mission and the vision are always in front of you, and that these are people's lives. They're homeless. They are needing protection, and they need people to pour into them to give them a better chance. And so you could be over here like, I need another donor. I need more money. We're gonna close if we don't have it. We use this language sometimes because it's true.
Hmm.
And so you have to be careful that you don't get in such a businessy mindset that you forget you're dealing with people, and watching your language. So, yes, on the back office with your finance team, you might be brainstorming how you bring in more money, but you don't want that at the front, talking with participants in the program and counselors and other people. You don't want to bring the stress of finances in the business side to everybody to wear them out when they need to focus on people's lives. So that would be one warning I would have for people.
I love it. And we're wrapping his stuff here. So these questions, I'm just giving you random questions just because I want to make sure we get some
I've
some
got something
questions
for you if you
answered.
want. Not a question, but another comment that fits with what we're saying.
Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So another risk in the nonprofit world that comes easy is people have a big heart, and so they rescue. And
Uh-huh.
so that's again the distinction of ECTLC is we're not just giving a handout to everybody. We are helping them up, We want them to learn to fish, So
Yep. Yep.
that is a factor, is that good people in the good spot of a nonprofit could just care and help too much and rescue and give money and take them to their house and blur boundaries and all this stuff. And if you do that, you're telling that person, oh, poor weak thing, stay weak. I got this.
Hmm.
And that rescuer role
Hmm.
is not healthy and is not effective. And so we have to have good boundaries in the nonprofit world. And so that may mean, no, you need to make the phone call. You need to find the money. You need to take care of your family, and putting that boundary and not taking it on all their problems on you, and knowing how to navigate the difference, when you're helping them and when you're backing off to let them do what they could do for themselves to get
Hmm.
that feeling of empowerment and strength to be independent. And so that is a real big factor in the nonprofit world to watch for.
I got one for you here.
Okay.
So, with all the myths that you probably hear around homelessness or an addiction, what's one thing you wish you can kind of erase? What's that one myth?
I'll say it in a picture instead of a myth, but I think many people see a homeless person on the side of the road.
Hmm.
This person might be skinny, they might smell, they're have their clothes all dirty, they're talking to themselves, they're screaming to themselves, and they just see this homeless addict, and they're kind of like, ugh, don't touch, don't look, don't, and they're
Hmm.
walking away. I have seen that person turn into a CEO of an amazing company. So I've watched how that person has gotten their mind intact, taking care of their mental illness, taking care of their addiction problem, ate and got healthy and worked out and just turned into a phenomenal human being that is then given back to society, whether it's restoring their family and taking care of their children, or a company and whatever else. They've gone so far. So I think people forget that. They just picture what they see right now and they forget, no, this is not just, you don't want to just help that person. You want to help that person because that person is going to help you in your
Mhm.
society in the future, and they're amazing, brilliant humans.
This is so good. That was actually a really good one. I wish we could end it there, but we got to go into the last part. Thank you for sharing that,
Yes.
because that is true. And anybody, right? Whether it's a drug addict, someone that's homeless, someone that may be going through something now. Maybe you have a brother or a sister, and you're like, they don't got nothing going on with their lives. They'll be nothing. That's not true.
Mhm.
We have to change the mindset. We have to help them change their mindset. So I love that you kind of put that into a perspective of a picture. People get that visual. So we're gonna now end kind of with that blind question. I know
Mhm.
you've probably been anticipating this moment of a blind question. If you can actually write a letter to your younger self, the
Mm.
Julie who just started the mission, what's one sentence she needed to hear?
Be brave and don't fear.
You're so good with your words.
Mhm.
You're so good. So easy. So easy. What is your blind question for the next leader?
Oh, good question. That was harder. You stumped me. I know my favorite question to ask people,
Go
and you
ahead. Give us
you
a
can
favorite
decide
question.
if it's a blind question. If you were guaranteed that you would not fail, what would you try?
No, that's actually hella good. That is a
Okay.
really good blind question. Yeah, I'm taking that one. We're giving that to the next leader.
Okay.
Um, we appreciate everything that you've been able to just share with us today on this podcast, and we just thank you for just being so open. It's positive attitude, by the way, from the first time that I met you. So thank you for that as well. You made it so much easier for us to kind of navigate this conversation. But for the people that are listening, where can they find you guys? Are you guys on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn?
Yep.
Let's talk more about where can people find these resources and maybe even keep in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just finished a website that has all the other websites on it. So if you go to Go Rhombus and Go, Rhombus is RHOMBUS, gorhombus.com. It lists all the websites, takes you to all the websites. So you can go to ECTLC.org and find me. I'm there physically at ECTLC most days, and people can come join me, or my email's easily accessible. You Google my name, you're going to find me. But that gorhombus.com website will take you right to where everybody lives, the home for all the other
Mhm.
websites.
Well, I love it. Well, I definitely appreciate your time. Guys, if you guys have not checked it out, what are you waiting for? Make sure you guys go to that website. Follow her. There's just this is the beginning of
Yeah.
things that are happening. Her and her husband, you got to follow the both of them because they're together. You just don't see them together. I remember that. Guys, this has been the
Yep.
Heart and Hustle podcast. My name's Efrain. Thank you so much to Dr. Julie Hayden for being here with us as our guest. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Heart and
Thank
Hustle
you.
podcast. Bye.